museum back to life.
You know, people sit out on the front porch hoping people will come by.
Go forth and do good. It's insane. I have the most understanding wife in the world.
I treat everybody the same thing.
Oh, that's the other thing I love about Marietta. It's like a melting pot.
You are listening to Marietta Stories. Each week, veteran podcaster Bill Nowicki brings you the heartwarming, interesting, and fun stories from the people that make the community of Marietta, Georgia, a place to call home. Here's your host, Bill Nowicki.
Dr. Grant Rivera is here with me, and I interviewed Dr. Tom Scott up at KSU, Professor Emeritus there of history, and he mentioned your name. And you had mentioned, I think we saw one another at Glover Park Brewery, and it was just before your announcement that you were going to move the administrative offices to a replica of the Lemon Street School. So let's talk through some of those details. First, welcome to Marietta Stories.
Yeah, it's great to be back, Bill. I enjoy being with you and am grateful for the time to tell Marietta Stories. Yeah,
so let's tell the story of the Lemon Street School replica from your perspective.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously somebody like a Dr. Scott, I'll refer to your avid listeners to Dr. Scott for the historical significance and timeline, because he's usually the person I go to make sure we have all the dates and facts right. Let me talk to you about the here and now. So for Marietta, what's important, I think, is we do two things simultaneously. One, we honor the tradition of Marietta, and that is inclusive of not only Lemon Street High School, but Marietta City Schools, and how really two paths and two communities became one. So it's important to me that we do that right. I've said over and over and over again, teaching a kid to read and write and do math is easy. Honoring the history of 125 plus years and doing that in a way that is respectful of a community that is also honoring as you look in reverse, but also honoring as you look ahead to the future is something that I find very intimidating as a superintendent. So we've really engaged a lot of people in this process. And
let me stop you real quick.
Yeah.
Do you think it's important for the kids to understand how they fit into the history too?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, of course, Bill. I think that our students need to understand that they are a part of history. They are living history. And I think in order to do that, they have to not only understand where we have been as a community, the good, the bad, and the ugly, but like how they fit into that historical context. And I think it's not just about what you read in a book. What we're trying to do is make it come alive through a renovation of Lemon Street Grammar School and ultimately building, if you will, a replica of the original Lemon Street High School. I mean, I want kids to walk through and not only see the history of Marietta City Schools and Lemon Street, but also to understand their place in that timeline.
I was amazed how excited Dr. Scott was when he started talking about this project. And imagine if you're a historian looking through old stuff, and it must, in the academic world and all that, but to really watch something come alive based on what you know to be important in the community and seeing that and reach out and touch it and be a part of it must be really cool.
Yeah, and I think about it from two perspectives, really. One is, how do we capture the historical significance and the stories behind this? I mean, I want the walls to come alive with faces and names and people and families. To be honest with you, I also want to walk my now 6-year-old daughter through that building and have her come back 75 years from now and feel the significance that I feel today as we're embarking on this project. I want her to feel that many years from now. So there's a lot of really historical significance, both for the past, but for the generations of the future as well.
Do you recall, because you did meet with Dr. Scott and some other folks that were part of Lemon Street, do you recall any stories and give people like a primer of what's to come in the walls of the school?
So I'll answer that question two ways. One is, yes, I can share with you some stories. I think it would be premature for me to say what we're going to do because that isn't really up to Grant Rivera as superintendent and as resident of Marietta. That is really going to be a community-wide effort, which is why we've tapped into the Dr. Scott's and Kennesaw State's team of historians, because I don't want this to be one person's vision. I want this to be a community story. I will, though, answer your question, and it was neat because as we shared with some of the now adults who had previously been students at Lemon Street Grammar School, they would say to me, hey, I remember this teacher, and she was in this room, and she was in this room for many years, and she looked like this, and we did this outside of school. And I got to thinking, how fascinating would it be if that corner classroom who belonged to a certain teacher, can we put that teacher's name and picture up in that classroom so every child that walks into that classroom in the Lemon Street Grammar School understands they sit here today as a junior or senior in high school, but yet they're sitting in a room that has historical significance because Mr. or Miss So-and-so graced these hallways years ago. So I think I am very fascinated by how we capture the faces and the names, literally, at the grammar school.
Mm-hmm. So tell me about the moment you thought this was something you would want to pursue and spend this amount of effort on.
So I got appointed as superintendent in January of 2017. Within 48 hours of me being appointed in this position, I was sitting in a room with developers who asked me, would we sell the property? I did not understand Lemon Street. I did not understand the historical significance. I certainly had not met Dr. Scott by that point in time. But it was in that moment that I said, no, we can't make a dollar off the history that is significant for the past and the future. So I got to be honest with you, very early in my tenure as superintendent, I was extremely committed to not selling the property. I don't think we knew yet what we were going to do with it, but I knew out of the gate early, and maybe it's because my mother's really into genealogy, and she says when it goes, you don't get it back. Mm-hmm. So I think maybe I took a little bit of my mom in that conversation, but I knew early, literally day one, day two, that we were not going to sell that property. To answer your question though, when did we start to have a vision? So there were a couple things. One, I was initially told that we could not renovate Lemon Street Grammar School. And I had lay people and I had even some experts saying, you can't, asbestos and condition of the building and what have you. Well, the reality is we started bringing in more people who had an expertise in this field, and we can. So we are. And quite frankly, we actually are going to save money by doing it this way. So for Lemon Street Grammar School, we're going to do a renovation inside that building that captures the historical significance, but we're going to keep the walls intact. We're going to fix the roof. We're going to fix the floors. We're going to put up a paint job. But we want that building to look as close to the original Lemon Street Grammar School as possible. The second phase of this project is there was Lemon Street High School that was torn down. And whether that decision was right or wrong, I'm not here to judge. What we want to do is build, to the greatest degree possible, a replica of Lemon Street High School across the street from Lemon Street Grammar School. Lemon Street Grammar School will serve our Performance Learning Center, so our high school students. Across the street, we'll have the central office, boardroom, and museum.
Wow, it's so exciting. And when did that start? You said right away, kind of when you took over in 2017, but there's a lot of pieces to that puzzle, I'm sure.
Yeah, the pieces to the puzzle, I think initially what got this ball rolling was a commitment that we were not going to sell the property. Then there were some early discussions with the board and some early discussions with experts in the field to figure out what are our options. Can we or can we not renovate? So I've been going to the board now really over the last 6-8 months saying we'd like to do something and we want to explore, and I promise I'll come back to you. And in every phase of that, we have gotten a little bit, our vision has become a bit more clear. So right now we are committed to renovating Lemon Street Grammar School. We're not tearing it down. The one exception is the back building, which is uninhabitable and the very, very far. There's 3 classrooms back there. And a commitment to build a replica of the high school across the street to be used for central office. That vision is very much set in stone. Where we are right now in the process is we have confirmed an architect, and as of last night, which would have been September 10th, we put before the board a construction manager. That architect, those 2 people, the architect and the construction manager, will come together to bring this thing to life with input from the community through this process that KSU is helping us with.
Wow, that's so exciting. And what would you tell people that would say, hey, why are we spending this kind of money? Is it that important? Why do you make this such an important part of your legacy here at Marietta City School?
Yeah, no, I think, listen, there are taxpayers in this community who need to know that we're being good stewards of taxpayer money. So let me answer that question a couple ways. So one, we're going to renovate the Lemon Street Grammar School with available SPLOST dollars. They're going to be used as classrooms. We are renovating that building in a way that we would renovate any existing building. So we're obviously going to keep a historical significance to that building, and yet we're going to be very, very good stewards of taxpayer money. That's going to be classrooms for kids with the right technology and the right resources. Across the street, as far as what will be the new central office that is a replica of the Lemon Street High School, that is not eligible for SPLOST funding. That's not eligible for the special local option sales tax, the 1 cent sales tax. Over a period of years here, and I give credit certainly to the previous superintendent, Emily Lembeck, we have been able to save funds along the way that right now sit in a building fund, literally for this very purpose. It's not in any way going to take away from salaries or to student resources. This has been a building fund that has accumulated through various reimbursements and what have you. So I feel as if it is not only fiscally responsible, but I also feel like it's historically responsible. And as we get closer to City Central, being closer to Marietta Square and the hub that is the city of Marietta, our intention is to sell the current property at Howard Street, to sell part of the property that is all good. So we're going to be able to pull together some resources, and by selling a property, offset the expenses that we have, tap into funds we've been saving. So this has literally no impact on a classroom or a student or a teacher.
Well, that's pretty exciting. Now, it sounds like all these projects that you're taking on has a big part of the community, pulling out what's important to Marietta. Anything else that you want to share about the future of Marietta City Schools?
Well, there obviously there are a lot of exciting things happening academically. Let me stay in this space that we're talking about now, which is engaging our community in. So our vision is not only to renovate the Lemon Street Grammar School for use by high school students in high school classrooms, to build a replica of this original Lemon Street High School for central office, but we're also exploring creating a walking trail that would extend from our property over to Zion, over to Turner Chapel. The idea is really eventually we can bring students almost as a field trip, if you will. My daughter went to SunTrust Park today as part of a field trip with her elementary school. We will be able to bring kids to Lemon Street to not only engage them in the history of our district, but also to educate them about some of the, quite candidly, Georgia standards and dynamics in history that we can and should be using our own community as an example. So whether it's a museum, a classroom, whether it's a walking trail, we really see this as being a destination for Marietta City students, and we're working very closely with the Tom Scotts, the KSUs, and other people that are experts in this space to leverage every ounce of learning that we can. Learning for Lemon Street alums, learning for Marietta High School alums, and learning for future graduates who can and will walk this space and understand how they fit in a larger puzzle.
Well, when I was talking to Dr. Scott, he shared a story about an African-American teacher that was allowed to teach in Marietta High School. And there was a couple parts of that story I thought were interesting. One is how the Lemon Street School was so important to the African-American community. It brought those folks together, but they also realized there were folks that weren't getting the best education. So Daphne, I think in her KSU archive that she was interviewed for, talked about seeing another African-American face Marietta High School and how that kind of helped her to realize that this is all going to work out eventually. It's tough right now, but I think it's so cool to be able to tell those stories that we think, we look at the facts, the dates and things like that. These were really real people that had to decide as a community, how are we going to do this? How are we going to protect our kids? How are we going to get them the best education and challenge the status quo? All right, I got Elizabeth Denny with me. Let's talk about Johnny Walker Realty. Since we started Marietta Stories 3 years ago, Johnny Walker Realty has grown tremendously. How's the culture changed?
My big fear in joining a company early stage was if it grew, would that change the culture? Johnny and Carrie have done an amazing job of making sure that everybody who joins Johnny Walker Realty really does follow the major tenets of the company. People who are absolutely customer focused, people who compete only with themselves, and people who understand that even though this is an absolutely high-stress job, you can still have a whole lot of fun doing it if you don't let it get to you.
You can contact Johnny and Carrie. They're at 262 Church Street. You go to JohnnyWalkerRealty.com or call them up at
678-626-0403.
this generation, and it could be children and adults, are so consumed with the here and now. It's a social media, it's a me, it's a now, it's an instant gratification. I think there's an opportunity to stop and pause and reflect and say, what are the stories that emerged from this time, from which we can learn, from which created who we are today? I can think of hanging out with a gentleman by the name of Rupert Raines. Rupert Raines, I don't recall if he was a deputy or if he was a police officer, but he worked in law enforcement, member of this community, and he would tell me stories about working with kids and the things he would do and picking up that kid and how he would help. And it's every time I'm with Rupert or every time I'm with Dr. Scott, I learn something more about the people that we call family and the people we call community. And I don't want those stories to be lost. It's interesting. We'll have a record forever of what's on Twitter or Facebook or social media, but I may not have a record forever of how a Daphne, a Rupert, a Tom, a Coach Friday, and others changed this community for the better. And I think those are the stories we don't want lost.
I totally agree, and that's a big reason why I started Marietta Stories. I've had a great time doing it, and some of the things like Beverly McAfee and those type of folks that are just very committed to doing the right thing every day, and it's exciting for me to kind of be the conduit for those stories. But I look forward to working with you in the future, and hopefully I can help bring some of these stories to light. And I'm trying to get Dr. Scott to get me the actual audio tapes of the interviews. But anything else you wanted to share? I know we've gotten some national attention, not only in football, go Blue Devils, but you've gotten some national attention by giving your bonus back to kids so they could apply for college. Also Floyd Martin, which I think the Floyd Martin story is such a cool story, but it kind of illustrates kind of what you've been talking about.
Yeah, Floyd was our postman. Amazing people, people where I feel better because I'm around them. So whether it's Floyd or Beverly or others, this community cares so much about one another. They care so much about the past, about the future, and I think I'm just humbled to be a small part of it. It's interesting as we going back to this original conversation, which is the construction of these two projects. We made a recommendation to the board just last night for a company called Parish Construction. Parish Construction is also renovating Martin Luther King Jr.'s former school, Howard Middle School, in Atlanta Public Schools. And watching from a distance the things they've done to engage the community so they could feel as if this wasn't Atlanta Public Schools project, but it was their project. Mm-hmm. They had a beam that they would put up in this school where members of the community signed it, this construction beam, and they would put it up in the rafters. And I think I am so excited through a construction company, through alumni, through your stories and podcasts, through everybody that we will engage. I want to engage the entire community around this sense of pride. I saw it happen with Martin Luther King Jr. School. It can happen with our school too. And I think that's the part that I'm most excited about, because I know I'm going to be telling my 6-year-old stories for decades to come about how special this is for our community. It's not special for Grant Rivera or for even just Marietta City Schools. It's special for this entire community.
Totally agree. And before I let you go, there was a Facebook question. Why are there styrofoam trays at the cafeterias?
Oh, why are there styrofoam trays? So I can tell you, and I say this with a smile.
I'm half kidding, but I thought I didn't want to end it.
Listen, I can't tell you, both myself and others. I'm the one lugging my recycling out every Thursday, and then yet I'm the superintendent where we're not necessarily recycling as we should. The honest answer is this. So I went down a rabbit hole to figure out what are our recycling options, and is something really being recycled, or is it ending up on a slow boat to China and going in circles? What I'll tell you is that we want to figure out ways, whether it's how we manage our buses or how we manage our cafeterias, to figure out how are we aware of our footprint kind of in this world, and how do we spend enough money to do it right, but don't spend so much money that we take away from kids, and what are our options? So I can tell you that is a regular conversation here. And and Bill, you and I might be washing cafeteria trays if we get away from styrofoam, so stay tuned. I'll invite you to come back and help me.
All right. I'll do it. Hey, I know there's so many people that support you in all these efforts. I mean, you can't get it done by yourself. Any folks that jump out that you want to recognize? Because like Kristen Bowden that I had on the show, and she talks about you and how you supported her, but she's just doing a bang-up job at, I can't remember the name of the school.
Yeah, Hickory Hills.
Hickory Hills Elementary School. But anybody else that's kind of been at the forefront of helping you to execute all these detailed projects?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'll speak globally for a minute. I mean, we have an incredible Board of Education. Mm-hmm. And I think the city of Marietta and its community should stop for just a moment and look at all the dysfunction that potentially exists in other school districts and other organizations and know that you've got 7 people committed to children in every conversation and every decision they make. You know, I'm here because of the community and because I want to raise my family here, but I'm also here because of this board. And they're special, they're different, and they are so much better. I think they deserve an acknowledgement. Obviously we've got 12 principals, 11 traditional schools, and then an early learning center. We've got 12 people. Interestingly, I just spent my entire day with them before you and I got together. And they are leading the right work focused on supporting students and staff and families. And I could not be more proud of this team that we call leaders in our district. And there's just so many different people, you know, whether it's central office or in local schools. I mean, there are 1,400 staff members in Marietta who hustle every single day to do the right thing. Are we where we want to be? No way. Are we better today than we were yesterday? I believe that.
All right. So one last thing, Grant, if you can share, I think you have a fundraiser coming up.
Yeah, we do. So my wife and I, in conjunction with Glover Park Brewery and Freckled and Blue and Children's Healthcare of Atlanta, are hosting a Ring the Bell benefit. The idea is really simple. How do we raise money and awareness around pediatric cancer? Our now 4-year-old daughter, when she was 10 months old, was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. And what we've learned along this journey is that pediatric cancer research is significantly underfunded. So it's actually only 4% of all cancer research goes towards pediatric cancer. I always say it's very simple for us. How do you say thank you to a hospital and a team of doctors who saved your daughter's life? The answer is you spend the rest of your life fundraising for the work that they do, so that way you can give other families hope. The reason we call it Ring the Bell benefit is because when a child completes their cancer treatment, they will go ring a bell in the hospital 3 times. Our daughters had the chance to do it. And we just want to give more kids and more families hope that they too can do that. So all the money that we raise goes towards the research being done by Children's Healthcare, and specifically the team of doctors around the world that were part of my daughter's team. So we're just supporting the research there. It's $25 a person. It's at Glover Park Brewery on Thursday, September 19th. Food is included in the cost. Wow. Obviously, you can get a pretty good beer at Glover Park, so that will be available. We have the American Idol winner, Maddie Poppy, who's performing. Wow. And then we have roughly 45 to 50 silent auction items. So we were fortunate enough to get a Joseph Martinez signed jersey, which I understand is not available out there, a Chipper Jones jersey. We have a cruise. We have a signed guitar by some fancy country star, a whole lot of things. I'm sitting on a signed, it's actually on my desk right now, the Marietta High School football team, ranked in the top 5 in the country, has signed a football that we'll have available to silent auction. So the silent auction will be available online for people who may not be able to make it. We encourage everyone to come out. We're hoping for 400 to 500 of our closest friends at Glover Park. At the end of the day, we're just going to give kids and families hope.
Great. On behalf of the community, thanks for all you've done for this project and the overall community, and I'm excited about the future.
Well, listen, I'll just offer a heartfelt thank you. There are a lot of amazing people in Marietta, and the fact that I could get 2 opportunities with a microphone on my face, I'm grateful. I just know that you and so many others are part of what makes this city and this district great, and I'm just humbled and honored to stand alongside you.
Thanks so much for listening to Marietta Stories podcast. A couple things. If you could tell a couple friends about the show, it'd be great. Also, if you go to the podcast app or anywhere else and subscribe to the podcast, you'll make sure you won't miss the next episode. This is Bill Nowicki saying thank you so much.